Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are looking at what is honestly the biggest paradigm shift we've seen since text-to-image AI first dropped. We're talking about AI moving out of the browser and living completely inside your production software.
So, you know the drill. You usually have to jump over to a web browser, open a chat tab, and talk to Claude. Well, on April 28th, that old way of doing things got a massive upgrade. The new workflow? It's Claude literally inside your tools.
Right, and this Claude for Creative Work announcement from Anthropic totally changes the speed of your creative workflows. But as we're going to see in a bit, it absolutely changes your risk profile too.
Exactly. And Anthropic didn't just partner with anyone, they announced official bridges for the absolute industry titans. We're talking Ableton, Adobe, Affinity, Autodesk, and Blender. These connectors act like pipeline glue. The whole goal here is to kill that manual toil of constantly jumping between different apps. You can move seamlessly from brainstorming an idea straight into executing it, right inside the platforms you already use every single day.
Okay, hang on just a minute. Isn't this literally just macros, but with a chatbot slapped on top? I mean, we've had script automation in these tools for decades now. Why is everyone hyping this up as some huge revolution when it kind of just sounds like basic automation with a shiny new interface?
Well, that's a fair question, but the big difference here boils down to one thing: user intent. Think about it. Static macros require you to click a button to run a very rigid, pre-programmed sequence. It doesn't adapt. But with these connectors, you're providing creative direction in plain, everyday language. You aren't just triggering a dumb script, you're actually telling the AI what your final goal is. And the AI translates that intent into the complex actions needed to get there.
It's like you instantly become the creative director, and the connector acts as your technical operator. It essentially figures out the whole execution plan on the fly. It knows how to navigate the specific menus, the tools, and the commands required to just get the job done.
And because it understands the goal, this leads directly to multi-step outputs across multiple apps, all in one go. Just imagine asking Claude to take a high-res portrait, retouch the lighting, crop it down, and perfectly format the whole thing as a video asset for a YouTube short.
Okay, I'll admit, handling all those intermediate steps, the stuff that normally forces you to manually click through 5 different submenus, that's huge. The time savings there are totally undeniable.
It really is. And Adobe is making a very bold claim here. Their specific connector brings over 50 pro-grade capabilities from across the Creative Cloud directly into Cloud. We're talking deep integrations with Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere, Express, the whole shebang. The AI isn't just generating some generic image anymore. It actually has its hands on 50+ specialized tools to manipulate your actual project files.
Plus, it goes way beyond just 2D design. The official Blender connector is looking incredibly powerful for 3D artists. Claude can now hook directly into the Blender Python API. So you can ask it to analyze an entire 3D scene, debug geometry issues, or even batch apply procedural changes to literally hundreds of objects at once. It writes and then executes the Python scripts right there inside your 3D workspace.
Now, to pull all this off safely, Claude relies on something called the Model Context Protocol, or MCP for short. This means the AI isn't just blindly clicking around your screen or trying to guess how Blender works. Instead, it relies on standardized, defined tool access. It's calling specific APIs that the software developers have explicitly exposed to it.
Okay, wait. Stop right there. If Claude can read my Blender scene or look at my Photoshop layers, are we leaking project files to an AI? If I give it access, is my confidential client work going straight back to Anthropic servers? Because let me tell you, that is an absolute deal breaker for any professional operator out there. And that is exactly why we have to separate permissions and look at the critical security difference here. Think about it like this. Read access lets the AI see files, stage changes, and suggest edits. That's relatively safe. But write access, that is highly privileged output access. The moment you let an AI actually edit, overwrite, or save a production asset, you're handing over the keys to the castle. The safety model absolutely has to match the risk you're taking.
Which brings us to our Safe Pilot Lab, where we'll look at how to test this out safely.
So how do we actually use these connectors without causing an absolute disaster? We need a highly practical playbook to test these tools without wrecking real project files. And there are 3 non-negotiable rules for safe AI pipeline testing. Rule 1, sandbox only. You always duplicate your work into a designated test folder. Rule 2, reversible tasks only. Only ask the AI to do things you can easily undo if it messes up. And Rule 3, human confirmation. Never set a connector to auto-run. The AI proposes the change, sure, but a human must confirm it.
Let's dive into our first example, Lab A, using the Photoshop connector. You take 10 product photos, place them in your sandbox folder, and ask Claude to apply a consistent crop, do some light background cleanup, and normalize the lighting across all 10 of those images.
Right, and the strict rule here is that you're requiring the connector to output these new versions strictly to a completely new folder. It must never overwrite your original files. That lets you test its multi-step orchestration completely safely.
Exactly. Now, moving on to Lab B to test out the Blender connector. In your sandbox scene, you'd ask Claude to generate a Python script that only applies non-destructive modifiers. Have it automatically rename objects to match your studio's naming convention, and print a changelog, all without permanently altering the underlying 3D meshes.
Got it. So you run it once, you review the code first, and only then do you actually execute it in batches. Okay, that makes perfect sense.
For sure. And for our final test, Lab C, let's look at Ableton. This one is less about editing files and more about calibrating your trust in the system. You ask Claude to explain a really complex audio routing technique, but crucially, one that you already know how to do. Because the connector grounds the AI in the official Ableton docs, you can actually compare its advice directly against your own expertise.
Right, so the goal here isn't to actually learn something new, it's to verify if you can trust the AI's guidance on a known technique before you go relying on it for something you literally don't know. Smart.
The ultimate takeaway for operators here is super clear. You want to use these connectors when a task is repetitive and reversible, like resizing assets or naming layers. But you want to avoid them like the plague when a task is destructive and ambiguous. You don't want AI making subjective creative decisions that overwrite original files, especially when a silent mistake could literally cost you hours of work.
What this all means is that we are moving from an era of just prompting into a new era of permissioning. Setting strict governance boundaries, that is the new required skill for creative professionals. A great example of structuring AI products safely is the Side Hustle Command Center. It's a tool that really shows how you can organize AI assistants with very clear, hard boundaries.
Yeah, it really proves that defining what the AI is actually allowed to do is just as important as what you ask it to do in the first place.
Connectors are, without a doubt, the fastest path from an idea in your head to a finished output, simply because they live right where the work actually happens. But knowing the immense power they have and the very real risks involved,
it leaves us with one massive question. Would you let an AI write inside your production files by default?